Hi guys, and welcome back to the Dollhouse. I'm Maeve, your Wednesday doll, and this week we are talking about transtrenders. Okay guys, so this week we are talking about transtrending. Now before I get started talking about what I wanted to kind of address in my video, I just wanted to say that I think a lot of people kind of got why we chose this topic or why we're even bringing this up kind of wrong. We didn't mean to be negative in any way, and we're not sitting here and saying that anybody who's non-binary or gender fluid or gender queer, that they're not trans enough. That's definitely not the message that we wanted to send to anybody. And I feel like sometimes people may hear a couple of words in a video and assume that they know what somebody's talking about just based on those things. And I feel like a lot of trans people in general, not just transsexuals, but everybody under that umbrella, can be very sensitive. And I think it's important that we have an open dialogue about these type of topics. We may have different opinions about things than you do, and that's okay. It's okay to have different opinions. It's actually very healthy to discuss these things. And I saw a lot of people that mentioned that they were disappointed in us for even talking about this. Well, the thing is that maybe we've had different experiences than you. Just because we feel like this is something that's valid and you don't, that doesn't mean that our experiences are any less valid. And to completely invalidate them by saying that it doesn't exist when we know it does is kind of not the best way to go about doing things. I would never assume to tell somebody that something that they have believed to have experienced was not real, because I think that's very arrogant and very condescending. But let me just say here that I definitely have witnessed transtrending, and I will explain more about that in my video in a few minutes. But I just wanted to say that we've all experienced this, which is why we're talking about it. We're not going to usually bring up a topic or talk about a topic if we don't feel like we have anything to say. So for me and my section of this week's topic, I wanted to talk about transtrending in drag. Now, what does transtrending have to do with drag, you might say? Well, because there are a lot of transsexual drag queens, transtrending does come into play. Now, there are two main sections of drag, I would say. One is drag queens who do performances in bars, and they're bar queens. They basically do performances in bars, they do events, they do bingo, they do, competitions, they do all kinds of different things, but they're usually kind of more of a casual atmosphere that's restricted to a bar or a club in most cases. And then there is the pageantry scene, which is where drag queens go to compete in beauty pageants. And these pageants are taken very seriously. They're very expensive. People spend every dime they have on them sometimes, and they're just so very competitive. Now, because a lot of transsexuals are drag queens also, they enter these competitions. And because they do, the bar is set higher and higher and higher every time. Now, also, in the drag scene right now, there's this big thing about looking like a transsexual. It's a good thing to look fishy. There are a lot of drag queens who resent this fact because they're, very much more interested in an older painted style of drag. But a lot of drag queens these days really are trying to look more real. They're trying to look more fish. They're trying to look more like a transsexual drag queen does than a transsexual drag queen tries to look like, a more painted drag queen. So that's the look right now, to look more real. And because of a lot of transsexuals that are entering these pageants who have, silicone injected in their bodies or have all kinds of different surgeries and things like that, there are gay men who are drag queens entering these pageants who kind of get some of the same surgeries and some of the same silicone injected into them, and they kind of wake up one day after getting implants and all of these things done to their bodies so that they could compete, and they are transsexuals, quote unquote. Now, obviously they're not transsexuals just because they've had these surgeries done, because being a transsexual usually means that you do not identify with the gender that you were born with. So they aren't necessarily actually transsexuals, which is why I consider this kind of to be transtrending. They are making these changes to their bodies and presenting in a way I think that a lot of transsexuals would, because they're trying to compete with transsexuals in these pageants. Now, you might say, well, that's not necessarily transtrending because they haven't told you that they are trans. Now, what happens to these gay men after they have all these surgeries? They have breast implants, they look basically like women. There's no way that they can still be presenting as gay men in, you know, the world. Gay men are, you know, very kind of harsh in their community about, you know, masculinity being something that's very prized. So if you have breast implants and you have silicone injected into your hips, your chances are you're not going to be doing that well in the gay community anymore, and you're almost going to have to integrate into the transsexual community just to, you know, keep a level head and be stable and, you know, still be able to enjoy yourself and have a good time and socialize without people constantly, you know, coming down on you for the surgeries and things that you've had. Now, like I said, still, does this make them transsexuals? No. And does it make it trans trending? Maybe. So the reason why I think it's trans trending is because a lot of them actually, after all these surgeries and things, they will say, you know, that they are transsexuals, because that's kind of the only place left that they have to go after they've modified their bodies so heavily. They're actually presenting as transsexuals a lot of the times. I've actually had people tell me that they were transsexuals and then tell me later on that they're not transsexuals, it's just that they had all this surgery done, and then the next thing they knew, they felt like they looked like a transsexual, so they started, you know, presenting themselves that way because it was the most conducive way to deal with things and to deal with people, because people are going to ask questions every single time you tell them that you still present as a man if you have breast implants or you have silicone injected into your hips. It can be very confusing for people. So that to me is trans trending, and I think that's a very valid example of something that could be considered trans trending, because these people really only got all of these surgeries and started presenting as a female and started living a life as a female because they wanted a competitive edge in these pageants. And now, am I saying this is a bad thing? Is that my opinion? No, absolutely not. I do not care at all. It does not matter to me one bit how you choose to identify. You know, I think with transsexual women, it's a sliding scale of different, you know, things that everyone does on their journeys. There are a lot of transsexual women who consider me to not be a transsexual or a true transsexual because I choose not to have SRS, because I'm comfortable with my body the way it is, or because I top, or because of this or that. So there's always going to be somebody saying, oh, you're not trans enough. And I'm definitely not saying that about these people either. Maybe they are trans to some degree, and some people would argue that these people are still transgender. But I'm just going based on what they've told me. So in my case, I'm working on facts. If this person told me that they're a gay man who had all these surgeries done and now presents as a female just because they have no other option, unless they were to get all the things removed from their body, which is actually extremely difficult, then that to me is something that kind of rings true in my head as being trans trending. Now, there are lots of other examples of this, some which Edie mentioned, some which Cassidy may have mentioned, and I think that they're all valid points. And like I said, when it comes to these kind of things, I think it's really important to just keep an open mind. Do not close your mind for one bit. I think as trans people, we can be so close-minded sometimes because we have such set thoughts about what trans is and what transsexual is and what transgender is, when really we should be, you know, trying to learn more even about our own community, because we don't even know everything. I know a lot of trans people that educate, you know, everybody about what trans is, and they don't even necessarily know what trans is. So it's important to continue to educate yourself as well. Don't ever think that you know everything about the trans community or people who present as trans or anything for that matter, because you don't. You will always be learning every single day of your life. I learn something new from every single trans person I meet. So it's important that, like I said, you keep an open mind and that you try to do the same thing, because the more you do, the more you will be a whole and complete person who really understands our community. Now that's pretty much all I have to say for this topic. I hope I didn't speak too fast or anything. I was having some webcam issues, so I'm trying to get this up. And I hope you guys enjoy this topic, and I hope this helps you understand a little bit more maybe what I'm trying to say, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.